Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, Marine Corps veteran and host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board. Today, we have a very special guest joining us from Houston. Chris Cassidy spent 11 years in the U.S. Navy SEALs, leaving as a captain. He did 2 deployments to the Mediterranean, as well as 2 deployments to Afghanistan. Most recently, Chris was the commander on the International Space Station for Expedition 63. During his time as an astronaut, Chris accumulated 54 hours and 51 minutes of spacewalk time, including 378 days in space. Chris, it's great to have you on the program today. How are you?
Oh, fantastic, Dan. Great to be with you. Always glad to be with another fellow veteran.
Absolutely. Well, you have an incredible amount of service to the country in the military as well as an astronaut. So one of the first things that I kind of hope for our audience, you could kind of almost compare and contrast a little bit was your Navy SEAL training, and not just BUDS, but the routine training, maybe training for deployments versus your training as an astronaut. Can you tell us maybe how the SEALs prepared you, and then also what was different, what was more challenging on the astronaut side?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm asked that very often, and in both senses, we're preparing a group of people and individuals, but collectively a small team of people to accomplish a mission and then weigh the risks. In my time in the SEAL teams, it was the risks were the enemy and the unknowns, and you're working with a small military unit. At my time at NASA, you're working with a crew. The enemy is really the environment and any technical, mechanical problems that are about to throw you a monkey wrench. And then you're trying to fly that mission safely and get everybody back. So at a broad level, the mission is kind of the same. And it all ultimately boils down to preparation, and that's what I learned. I'm actually still active duty until Friday. Okay. I'm finishing up my 28-year Navy career. Wow. A lot of people don't realize that when we have military astronauts and civilian astronauts, and the Johnson Space Center has been my duty station for the last 17 years as I've been here. So I'm retiring from the NASA and the Navy all in 2 days on Friday. So anyways, that just as a side note.
We got you right before a really big day.
You got me right at the end. But back to your question, like what is common and what kind of helped me. And really the as a young person coming in the military, you're really forming your foundation of how to think operationally, think, what's the next alligator nearest the boat, kind of, and be able to talk on the radio, operate yourself, think with your teammates, and that's what small unit tactics and training kind of hammers into you. When you're young and you're 22, you don't realize that that's the foundation that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life, but it certainly did with me. And that preparation that I had in the SEAL teams really set me up for success when I showed up at the door at NASA, already with an operational mindset, already with a vision of how do we accomplish a mission, weigh the risks, and balance those risks and risk trade-offs versus mission success. And I don't know. I could go into this topic. I could go into this topic, Dan, for hours, because I think it's fascinating and very applicable to civilian and military life.
I was going to ask you that if you felt like maybe the right connotation is not like you have a leg up versus other astronauts or that you're competing, but do you think it was an added benefit that you were in the service and that you had to deal with unknown circumstances, that you had to be in foreign environments, that you had to consistently deal with the threat of the enemy or equipment breaking down, and then problem solving on the fly, and making sure that you have your proper SOPs in place, that the guys in your team know what they're going to do. You come with that already to some degree, as you said, downloaded, as a young man. You might not know that you're getting those experiences at 22, 23, 24 to 5, but when you show up at Johnson Space Center, you felt like you had a very solid foundation, right? That would really help you, again, not have a leg up, but certainly help advance you or prepare you for future training.
Without a doubt. And I would say I was at the point sooner where the instructor staff here at NASA, the other experienced astronauts, where they were trying to get us to, because of my military background, I was able to get to that point quicker. Some of my classmates who came in to become astronauts through different paths, we all arrived at the same point in terms of being effective crew members.
Right.
And you just take a little bit longer if you don't have that foundation already rooted, which I did in the military.
So another question I'm interested to ask you too is, as spending the time that you did in the SEALs, what was it about being an astronaut? Was it the challenge? Was it a desire that you had to see space and experience space that drew you into the space program?
It was when I was a young guy, as a kid, I knew about astronauts. I thought that that's what other people did. I didn't realize it was something that anybody can apply to do. Even when I was a young military officer, it didn't really dawn on me until I met this guy named Bill Shepard, who was the first SEAL to become an astronaut. And in talking to him, I realized, oh, his background was competitive enough to be selected. Maybe mine could as well. So that was the initial spark, like, oh, well, wonder if it's possible. And then I realized as I got further into the process, I really love what I'm doing in the SEAL teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like I was desiring a change in my employment or something different. But I thought, well, how cool would it be if I got selected as an astronaut? I would really like to do that. And it sounds pretty neat. But I didn't truly understand the full concept of the job. When you think of an astronaut, you think of just the person that flies in space, and that's not every day. There's a lot to the job that's not in space. And then as I learned more, and then up to the point in when I got selected, got the famous phone call, said, "Hey, you want to come work with us?" I realized that what I love is operational things. I love doing stuff. I love working with a group of people to get a mission done. And at some point, particularly as an officer in the military, as you move more senior, you become less and less operational. And you're still involved with operational plans and staffing, but more of a staff officer. And I was so excited to kind of piece it together in my head that, hey, if as an astronaut, I get to remain as an operational hands-on doer for longer in my career. Here I am, a Navy captain, 06, and I'm still out there putting a spacesuit on. So I've been really fortunate with that.
So can I ask you, you mentioned some of the desires that you had maybe as a young guy that were interested in space. Bill Shepard, I think you referenced, but was there an instance growing up, maybe in childhood, where you looked through a telescope, or was there were you able to see a space launch? Was there kind of a spark? Do you ever remember in your childhood that kind of lit up your imagination for space? Or was it something later in life that you started to say, oh, okay, now I think that's the next progression I would like to move in?
No, 100% it was later in life. As a young kid, I grew up in Maine. I had no idea, like I mentioned, no idea about what space would be. Didn't really grab my interest looking out at it through a telescope. I was enamored by the military, and particularly I loved watching the Army Navy football game and the sharp looking uniforms walking on both sides of the field. And that, as I remember being like 10 or 11 years old, thinking, man, it would be so cool to go to a service academy. So that was my kind of focus as a young guy, was more in the military side of things. And again, it was later, I was 5 or 6 years into my Navy career when the sort of space part of it came to life.
how relatable, and I go back to comparing and contrasting, is, would you say deployments, combat deployments or otherwise, were similar to your time in space? I know obviously different mission, I get that, but the preparation, the training, the cyclical nature of getting ready to go do something, preparing your body, preparing your mind, then going out 4, 5, 6 months at a time, and then coming back and almost doing the same repetition.
You have the answer right there. It's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. We as most folks in the military can attest, you form together with your unit, you do some number of months of pre-deployment training, then you go somewhere and you do the mission.
Mm-hmm.
You come back from the mission, however long it is, and people change out, new group, new leadership, new workers, and then you do that cycle again. And the same pattern holds true here at NASA. I've flown on 3 space missions, and the space shuttle, the lead up, the training was about a year to a year and a half, all of which is in Houston, and we had a 7-person crew. My last 2 missions were on a Russian Soyuz, a lot of training in Russia, 2-year lead up to the mission, just because there's that training, the travel adds more time, and there's more things to learn. But the same cyclical nature holds true, and that preparation is the key to success. Like you don't on a mission to the space station, you don't know what's going to fail.
Right.
You don't know what's going to break. You don't know what curveballs you'll be thrown, but you have a solid working knowledge of the whole machine, which is the spacecraft. And with that, and working with the ground teams, you can pretty much solve anything. And the same is true when you're ready for a deployment in the military. You do all that pre-deployment training. You really don't know what exactly the terrain will be, or exactly the mission statement will be when you get off the airplane in some desert place. But you have that bedrock of training that you can deviate from when you get there.
So you mentioned something that I spent some time reading about, were things that are unplanned, whether that's on a mission when you're going out to do a patrol, or whether that's going on a spacewalk. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about May 11, 2013. You and Thomas Marshburn performed an unplanned spacewalk to replace a pump controller box suspected to be the source of an ammonium coolant leak. You talked about, as much as things are unplanned, you still have a base of knowledge. Can you take us through that spacewalk, and how much of it actually really feels unplanned and impromptu, and how much of it feels like, hey, I've done the training over and over again. I know that even though this maybe wasn't in our calendar, but I'm still confident we can go out and we can replace this, and we can continue on with our mission.
Yeah. So in that particular, let me back up. Normally, spacewalks in a 6-month mission, a crew feels lucky if you get to do 1 or 2. And they're very planned out. They're marked on the calendar months in advance, and there's this lead up to that day in terms of physical preparation of equipment, as well as mental preparation to review the procedure. The procedures are all performed here in Houston in a large swimming pool and rehearsed by other people to kind of flush out any kinks or gotchas in the procedure, and then it gets sent up to the space station for execution. So long lead time normally. We generally advertise like the shortest, oh my God, we got to go fix this thing, is about a 3-day cycle. If certain things are already in place, the suits are already built, they're hung on the wall, they're up, their maintenance is current. So this particular day, the Tom Marshburn and Chris Hadfield and their crewmate, they were about to leave the space station at the end of their 6 months. They were like 3 days away from going home. And the night before, one of the Russian crewmates came down and said, hey, I think I see out my window some looks like snowflakes, and we all generally know that is what ammonia looks like when it starts to leak out. It kind of crystallizes into these snow particles. we called the ground and tell them, put some cameras on it, and it was kind of a small leak, they thought. And after a few hours of giving them the information, video and commentary, we went to bed. And thinking, oh, okay, well, they're gonna chew on this and those guys will go home and maybe I'll get a spacewalk in a couple weeks with the new crew that arrives. Well, every night when we go to bed, the whole crew goes to sleep at the same time. It's not like a ship where somebody's always awake.
Okay.
We turn all the lights out. I woke up at about 6 a.m. and I peek my head out of my sleeping quarters and I look down the hall and I see a body. And then all of a sudden I see these big white teeth smiling. And I thought, what's he smiling about? And I opened up my computer and read email from the ground that had arrived the night before while we were sleeping. It said, Chris and Tom, welcome to EVA prep day. You're going to do a spacewalk tomorrow morning.
Oh,
so 24 hours later, this is unprecedented, unheard of. And so I float out, I high five Tom. The two of us kind of spend the rest of the day getting things ready, but things were largely ready. And we went out the following day and performed a task that we had never practiced, had never rehearsed, but we had generally seen the area on, both of us had done spacewalks before. So that is what you're talking about, that we didn't know we were going to be doing that task. We didn't know when we were going to be doing that task, but the two of us had general knowledge and the ground team felt comfortable with us to kind of pull together this spur of the moment spacewalk and go. We had to take out a leaking component and put in a new one, and the repair worked just fine. So it was not a very complex fix from our perspective, the actual actions. The complexity was pulling off all that needs to happen in such a short period of time. I'm trying to think of a military analogy, but in most cases, military missions have at least a couple days of preparation before you go. So there's some folks can relate.
So what were the nerves like when, I guess, you push open the hatch there and then you begin your mission?
The nerves of a spacewalk are generally highest on your first time you exit the spacecraft. Your brain is still operating in an Earth mentality where if you look down out of an airplane and you see Earth below you, you think you're going to fall. And the same thing is true when you open that hatch. You're holding on. Your brain is saying, I am going to fall right down through those clouds. And you have to be very deliberate, say, okay, I can let go of my hands. I'm not going to fall.
That gives me a little bit of, my hands are sweaty just thinking about it, because I'm not a huge fan of heights. So
it really does mess with your mind initially. And it takes a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes on your first spacewalk to settle into somewhat of a groove and get going. But periodically, you look up from your job that you're doing right in front of your hands and look down and you see Earth and you go, whoa, what am I doing here? This is crazy. Fortunately, on that particular spacewalk that we're referencing, it was both of our, I think, 4th spacewalk maybe. So we didn't have quite those initial jitters. It was more of jitters of, let's don't screw this up and make the problem worse. Let's fix the problem.
Does the sense of awe go away? Like, do you eventually become, maybe not the right word is maybe accustomed to, but just like, I can remember somebody telling me in the military, like, once you're in the military for long enough, or in the Marine Corps, for me, it becomes a job. You have to get up every day at a certain set time. You have to get your PT in. You got to take care of your uniform. You got to clean your room. You have to do the checklist. You got to make sure you're shaved. You got to get your hair cut on the weekend. There's a regiment to the life where while my friends were going to school, I had a different type of job. So, but when you're in space, like you said, does it get accustomed? Does it feel like, okay, I know what my job is, I'm going to do my job? Or is there always just a sense of awe, like you said, when you can look out the window and you can see the whole world, revolving just below you?
It's not every second of the day that you're in awe. And I found that when I started to not appreciate the holy cow factor is when I needed to take a take a moment and appreciate where I was.
Yeah.
Because just like you said, everything becomes a job. Doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're an NBA basketball player in the playoffs right now, it's a job, even though we love watching it. And same thing for us on a spacecraft. But you have to appreciate where you are, and not kind of get bogged down with the job aspect of it. And so every day I tried to, I guess, stop at the window. Usually the time I did it was at nighttime when I was brushing my teeth.
Yeah.
I just, because you're doing nothing for that minute anyways. And at the very least, that was my time to look out the window, appreciate where I'm at, kind of insert a little spirituality into my day, and realize, how freaking lucky am I right now that there are, whatever, 7 billion people down there on spaceship Earth, and there's 3 or 6 of us up here on the space station right now, and I'm one of them. And so that I try to do that every single day. And some days you have more appreciation than others. You do get bogged down with work, and you're trying to catch up and make sure you don't get behind. But that's all part of the gig, and we don't mind.
How much did your space experience change when you became the commander? And can you talk to us maybe about some of the leadership principles up there? You're obviously in a small unit. I'm sure that people, the other astronauts or the cosmonauts, I believe, from Russia, or if you're working with folks from different countries, are very in tune. They understand what their mission is, and there's a certain level where you can allow those people to operate within their own realm. But you're also the leader of the group. I'm guessing you're interacting on a routine basis with folks in Houston and keeping them updated. Can you talk about that experience, and then maybe some of the leadership principles that you learned from it?
Well, the easy thing about being commander of the International Space Station is all of the crew members are very mature, have been around the space industry for a number of years, and had a career previous to whatever and this is true in whether they're Russian or American or Japanese or Canadian.
Did I say that right? They're cosmonauts, right? Or did I just
totally
screw that up?
My two crewmates were cosmonauts, and one of them was very experienced. Either one of us could have been the commander. And it really, to some degree, the commandership rotates amongst countries.
Okay.
So you can be there with somebody that's slightly less experienced than you, but it's their country's turn to be the commander. And that's just, again, part of the situation. But I was blessed with 2 cosmonauts that really understood the mission, and we all were kind of melded together in one brain. So there was no real day-to-day leadership efforts kind of going on. The true case where the commander needs to be the commander is what we call off-nominal situations or emergency situations. If the alarm goes off in the middle of the night and you have to take immediate action, we all have our assigned roles, and the commander is the one certainly ultimately responsible in making decisions. As you know, Dan, if everybody's in charge, no one is.
Yeah.
And so we certainly have a commander for that reason. And like you said, as a commander, I was the main interface with the ground teams, and conveying any crew concerns, and keep looking after each other, making sure that we're all well rested and not overworked and that sort of thing. So I viewed my main role was to make sure that we as a crew were ready to respond. We had enough physical and mental gas in the tank to get up and do our job at any moment in time, whether it was 2 a.m. or in the middle of lunch. And that was our responsibility to the United States and to all the taxpayers around the world that support the program.
Was there something that you missed when you were in space? I mean, I understand, your family or your kids, but, were you like, man, I can't wait to get back and have a cheeseburger, or I want to go to the basketball game, I want to go see the Rockets play, or something that you were kind of counting down the days? You're like, man, I can't wait till I get back and, I don't know, jump in the pool again, or, get a tan or something,
Yeah. We don't have an oven, like we don't have baked goods. We don't have the
Ooh,
smells coming out of the kitchen like chocolate
yeah.
chip cookies or the turkey on Thanksgiving. So the food, the food is actually really good, and it's made here in Houston and packaged in a way where they dehydrate the food and we add the water to it. It's not a case of we're eating horrible food or squeezing goo out
Right.
of a tube, but you don't get those amazing smells associated with a home cooked meal
The experience
or
of it.
the experience of it that goes with the eating. And associated with smells, um, the smells of earth,
Mm,
mowed grass in the summer, the ocean, um, whatever, your garage,
yeah.
whatever the smell is that you associate with fun things at home. We don't have those. So really, if you count the food and this, what I'm talking about is that sense of smell that are unique to Earth experiences. I'd say that was kind of sums up what we miss.
No, it's really interesting. I have to. I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here, but I wanted to see if I could get your take or maybe other astronauts' take on really the explosion in growth in space companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin. There's an incredible amount of private business or individuals. I believe Virgin Galactic is working on kind of space tourism, right? So this industry has really been proactive in trying to provide solutions, I believe, to NASA as well as to private citizens who want to experience space. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit and what it looks like from your side and what you see from that industry maybe going forward?
Yeah, so all of us on the government side are just as excited about all of that as the viewing population out
Yeah,
there in the world, and that's because um, though all this commotion, I guess, has been,
yeah,
revitalization, newness, new companies, growth, all of this in the space industry, it inspires people to pay attention, excitement, enthusiasm for space travel, people to ask questions. What's our next destination? What will it be like back on the moon? What will it like be on Mars? Um, and so all of that public enthusiasm leads to momentum, which leads to ultimately funding for the government side
mm,
of it. And um, that public enthusiasm, I think, is something that will carry us a long way. That it's one thing to have just a nice, sharp, crisp technical answer on why you're going to space. But if you have that and it includes motivating the world, and
mm,
think about by that, I'm not being facetious. You think about how the whole entire world will be tuned in when the first astronauts step onto the surface of Mars. And that won't be me. I'll be long since retired, and maybe it's one of the young colleagues that I have right now that maybe I'm walking the hallways right now in our office building with the one of those people. I don't know, and they don't know. But every single person on the planet almost has the internet in their hand, and certainly in another 8 or 10 years, that would probably be true, and can be watching live feed from Mars and the helmet camera of those people walking on Mars. And I think that's going to have this really positive effect on mankind and unifying effect on mankind, because it's not going to be one country. It's not going to be just American flag on the shoulder.
right.
It's going to be representative of a cooperating group of nations on a mission.
So can I ask you about this then? It's so hard for the layman to understand. Like, can we actually put like a base on the moon and use like theoretically, right? I think that's what Elon Musk wants to do is like you create a space station on the moon, which you almost act as an elevator, right? And you can send stuff up, and then you can use that theoretically to go to Mars, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. So turns out putting it exactly on the moon's surface might not be the best place because you still have to get off the lunar surface. There's like 1/6 gravity there.
Okay.
So NASA is building a concept called the Lunar Gateway, which will be like a space station, but in the orbit of the moon.
Okay.
And there's a point called not to get too geeky, but Lagrange points, which are where the intersections of the lunar gravitational pull and the Earth gravitational pull are equal. And so from points like this are great places to get into different orbits. And again, it's not entirely my area of expertise,
Right.
but the lunar gateway won't be on the surface of the moon. It'll be off, in the lunar orbit. And from there, we can do lunar excursions and walk on the moon, and then ultimately have missions to Mars or other destinations.
Man, just absolutely incredible to think about. I mean, it's exciting. It's like you said, it makes me somebody who was never very good at math or science, as a kid, and is still not very good. I don't think that's changed a whole lot, but my dad was always very interested in stars and astronomy, and to be able to watch this really fast maturation and growth of an industry with some really incredible leaders in the space program like yourself, as well as innovators on the private side. It feels like we're just almost in this Goldilocks moment where there's, like you said, there's now financial support behind it, there's public opinion support behind it, and it feels like we're not too far away from hopefully taking that next jump to, back to the moon and then maybe on to Mars. But during your journey, I want to ask you, because maybe from the outside, people think it was easy. Frankly, maybe people say, he was just a tough guy. He was very smart, and he did spacewalks. Was there ever a time that you can remember thinking, or an obstacle that you had to overcome to either continue your career in the Navy SEALs or your time as an astronaut?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's career has growth moments and learning inflection points, and mine is no different. I remember in one of my SEAL platoons, I was a SEAL platoon commander, and we went through a period of time in pre-deployment training where we were struggling a little bit. We weren't clicking as a unit. We just didn't feel right. It didn't feel the same as other platoons I'd been in, and it took like a group meeting and kind of reorganizing responsibilities to get it back on track. But I do remember thinking, man, am I failing here? As the leader of the unit, what am I doing wrong? Is this or what? But collectively, we got ourselves sorted out. That's one example. When I became an astronaut, another spacewalk, not the one you mentioned with Tom Marchburn, but with Luca Parmitano, we had an incident where water was leaking into his helmet, and it was a very scary time where the equipment failed us, and he almost drowned while we were outside on a spacewalk. It took a year or so for NASA engineers to figure out why and then correct the problem. That's more of a technical equipment type challenge. And then again, later in my NASA career, I served for 2 years as the chief astronaut, which is kind of like in military jargon, the commanding officer of the unit. And we went through a reorganization period in our parent organization. So if you think of the astronaut office like a battalion-sized unit, and then the regiment or whatever is above the battalion wanted to reorganize. And so we were part of this reorganizational effort, and it was a painful process internal to us, and it wasn't popular. And I was kind of the implementer of my boss's great idea, in quotes.
Yeah.
And
you had to be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah, bearer of bad news, but yet also support the organization. And you argue your case behind closed doors, but then ultimately the decision is made, and you got to turn around and go execute. And that was a real, not to get deep in the weeds of organizational challenges, but that every organization has organizational challenges, and that was one I experienced on the NASA side. And astronauts are all very opinionated, even though we get along well. They're all smart people, and they all have great input. And it's tough to balance all of that when you can't take it all. Some people have to just be heard and say, I understand, thank you for the input, but we're not doing that.
Right.
And yeah.
So can I ask you, through all of that, if I can ask you to be maybe a little introspective about what either emotional intelligence or bearing or those types of intangibles that allowed you to be successful in both your role as an astronaut and your role as a Navy SEAL? What made you adept at both of those jobs?
Yeah, one thing I learned in BUDS in SEAL training is that everything has an end. And in SEAL training, the end was just, can I get to the 10th push-up? You know, I'm about all or can I hold this log over my head for another 30 seconds? And I sort of extrapolated that to a rule of just make it to the next meal. They have to feed you. And so I've carried this philosophy with me from BUDS all the way through my career, the just make it to the next meal mindset. And the meal is not necessarily a meal. It's a figure of time, and that time horizon, it can be an accordion depending on what you're going through in life. If you're dealing with cancer, just make it to the next meal might be get through this chemo treatment and deal with what comes after that. Or if it's a divorce, you know, it's a longer process. Or if it's a loss of a loved one, you know, or dealing with a challenging situation at work, whatever, you can fill in the blank with whatever your struggle is, and the time horizon to get through it may change, but breaking those things up into smaller manageable chunks is something that I learned to be an effective technique with all the challenges I've been through personally, and then watching others that I care about and love go through the same thing. And even like your deployments in the military, you know, if when you kiss your wife goodbye and you think about, oh my gosh, I'm not going to see her for 7 months, that's a long time. But if you say, hey, I'm going to talk to her next Sunday, you know, you can go a week, no problem, and catch up on life. And before you know it, those weeks turn into months, and those months are done.
Yeah, that's certainly, I'm glad you reiterated and broke it down like that, because it's kind of like that, phrase, the best way to eat a whale is one piece at a time. You just take it in small chunks, and that way you're not focused on accomplishing, the mission, whether that's leaving the service and reinventing yourself, as a young soldier, sailor, Marine, or, like you said, if you're in the executive of an organization and you have a big reorg to do, you just do it one piece at a time. And that way you allow yourself to slowly digest what you're going through and slow things down a little bit and accomplish it in small pieces. That leads me to my next question is I believe by the time that this airs, you will be retired from the Navy as well as from NASA. So I have to ask you, we spend so much time with our guests who are veterans talking about military transition, talking about even for officers mid-career transition and what that looks like. So for you, what are you most excited about starting? I guess maybe this could be considered a third career for you after you leave NASA.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've spent a lot of, as we all do, when you get to this point and you're kind of taking the step off into, over the cliff, like where's my foot going to land? I thought a lot about what makes me tick, what I'm excited about. And one thing that I have really answered time and time again is that I'm looking forward to controlling my own schedule.
Yeah.
And I've lived to an operational schedule where you don't really control anything, and it's tough to make personal plans or even commit to a vacation and that sort of kind of thing. And I'm kind of done with that, and I'm ready to just if you call me and say, hey, we're going fishing next Thursday, it's all day trip, but I want to say, yeah, I'm coming.
That's awesome.
And so to do that, I'm going to start out with a little public speaking and maybe advisory boards or board forward situation if it's the right fit until which time I'm ready to, or an opportunity feels right, people feel right, and I can add value, then I might do something different. But for the near term, I'm very fortunate that I'll have military retirement.
Yeah.
My wife's works here in Houston, and so we'll have chow on the table and a roof over our house. And public speaking, it will be a fun way for me to share these experiences that you and I are talking about with other audiences.
Yeah. Well, that's really incredible. And I appreciate your service to the country in the Navy SEALs and the Navy, as well as a NASA astronaut. And I know we've covered a lot of ground here, and I think we could probably keep talking for another hour or so, even like you said at the very beginning, just kind of comparing and contrasting the mentality and the preparation from, your military training and your SEAL training to your preparation as an astronaut. But in saying that, is there anything that maybe we didn't get to cover today that you would like to address, or is there a word that you would like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity. I'm no different than anybody else watching this. I am a person that had cool opportunities and I took advantage of them. To some degree, I had to perform a certain level to have the opportunities, but all of us have that capability by preparation, kind of, a little bit of homework. And that's what led me to the Naval Academy. That's what then led me to the SEAL teams. That's what led me to the astronaut office. And next thing I know, when you introduced me, I think, who led that life? Well, I did, but it's not because I'm some amazing person. I'm just a military veteran, just like all the listeners, and I'm happy to share those cool experiences with everyone. But it's all every one of us has a cool story, and I like hearing everyone else's stories, and I'm happy I could share mine.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you again so much for your military service, as well as I know your wife and your family. They're obviously a huge component of that. I know that military spouses and in the family serve right along with people like yourself who are in the military, and then well as an astronaut. It's incredibly, I feel incredibly honored to be able to sit down and speak with you, and appreciate you being with us to talk about these really incredible stories.
My pleasure, Dan. Great to be with you today.
Thank you. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board, we will be back here on next Monday. Remember to follow the Next Gen Warrior Show on Instagram, social media, your favorite podcasting platforms by typing in @VoicesOfVets, and you can see, listen, and follow for our most up-to-date interviews. We'll see you next week.
Follow us on Instagram @VoicesOfVets, on Twitter @VoiceOfVeterans, and on Facebook facebook.com/voicesofveterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.